Hi everyone, I'm Olivia. Let's talk books. It's the beginning of November. That means it's time for October's reading wrap up. Overall, I had a great reading month. It's peak award season. I read through the National Book Awards fiction long list and I was able to finish it. Since I post on Tuesdays and Fridays, I was hoping to get this video out last week on the 31st, but one of the books I ended up carrying into the beginning of November. I'm still counting it for October. On Storygraph, I just like the statistics and analytics to be even and equal. I also called this month Arctober because I read 3 separate advanced copies. I actually kind of technically read 4. I was gonna read a 5th, but I didn't get to it, which is kind of rare that I read so many advanced copies in one month. I don't request too many because I like to read them right away. I don't like them building up, but a lot of them have November release dates and I did need to play some catch up. So not my usual kind of reading month, but for my stats, I read 11 books for 3,530 pages and my average star rating was a 3.91. I'm getting back up there in the amount of books I'm reading. I'm still 7 books behind on my goal to reach 100. So the amount of books I read in November and December will be inflated. I usually read about 8 or 9 books a month, and if I do that every month, that does average to be 100 in a much easier and even pace. Even though I did read 11 books, this is still going to be a little bit shorter of a wrap up because all of the long listed books are going to be reviewed in their own video. I'm not going to talk too in depth right now. I will still share my ratings and my general thoughts. And all of these books I'm talking about in my chronological reading order. North Sun, or The Voyage of the Whaleship Esther by Ethan Rutherford is on the long list. I might need to keep a tally of how many times I say long list in this video. So this is on the long list, but in this book, this is about a group of men on a whale ship. The captain is employed by this really rich family to go find the son-in-law who went missing on the last voyage and to bring him back. And then it also follows the 2 young boys who are the youngest crew members. They usually have a kid or 2 who can reach up in the mast or the ship nest or whatever it's called. But those 2 boys are brothers in this. You see the 2 storylines of the captain and the boys. This is actually a pretty brutal book. It was shortlisted. There's a lot of animal violence and gore. The little boys get assaulted as well. It's literary horror adjacent. I will say the writing itself is good and I appreciated the short chapters. It's just not my cup of tea. I gave it 3 stars. Then we have The Sisters by Jonas, Hassen, Khemiri. This was the longest book on the long list, so it feels like a huge accomplishment. The big books always intimidate me. I'm a very impatient reader. This did not make the short list though, and I can kind of see why. This also follows dual narratives. We follow 3 sisters and then 1 boy who knew them in childhood, and then we see them grow up and go through different stages of life. It also plays with narrative through time. It's a really great character exploration. Every character felt very realistic and grounded. I don't know if it entirely earned its pages, but of all the big books on the long list, this felt the least overwritten. And I ended up giving it 4 stars because the 3rd part was the weakest for me. And when you spend so much time invested in these characters, you would really hope that the ending would be this big crescendo. I was a little surprised by the final chapter, but not in a bad way, just in it was different from my expectations way. I'm glad it was on the long list and it was put on my radar. And jumping over to the Booker long list, and this is also on the short list, but I read Flesh by David Szalay. I'm in the Booker of the Month book club. This was our monthly selection. I actually liked it a lot more than I thought I would. A lot of people are writing it off as the cis white man book. I actually think it's much more complex and nuanced than that, and I don't think that that's a fair critique. I do understand why people say that. In this, we follow a man named Istvan. He's sexually assaulted as a teenager, and then something happens in the very beginning that sets his life on a certain trajectory. There are a lot of really good themes and explorations of the dynamics of sex, money, and power. We follow Istvan through his life as all of those 3 things weave in and out. He ends up getting married. He has a complicated relationship with his stepson. There are affairs. There's a lot, but the dialogue is very sparse and simple, but I don't mean that in a condescending way. And someone in our book club actually made a really good point that they feel like a lot is happening off page, and then what happens on page are the moments in between the major life moments. And I'm so sorry, I forgot who said that. I gave it 4 stars, and part of me is actually thinking of picking it up and owning it once it's released in paperback. The Booker judges are looking for a book that's easily rereadable and one you can keep gaining from every time you revisit. I think this definitely fits that criteria. I don't know if it'll pull off the win, but I think it has a strong chance. Then I read A Guardian and a Thief by Megha Majumdar, and she's on the long list and made the short list. I'm part of Penguin Random House's audio influencer program, so I was able to listen to a copy of this early. I loved it. This is my favorite from of the month. It's the only one I gave 5 stars. This is a near dystopian story where the town they live in has a food shortage, so everyone's experiencing hunger. Again, with 2 narratives. We follow a mom, her father, and her daughter, primarily through the perspective of the mom, are getting their visas to go live in America with her husband, who is able to immigrate there already with his job. And then we follow this young boy. The young teenage boy comes from a family that's much more impoverished. These 2 storylines intersect and a lot goes wrong, and both characters explore what it means to be a guardian and a thief. It has a shocking ending and really, really powerful conversations. This really should be read with somebody, whether it's a buddy read or book club, because there's just so much to talk about. I think I would have read this anyways, even if it wasn't on the long list, but I'm very glad it was. Then I read an advanced copy of Son of the Morning by Akwaeke Emezi. This is a fantasy paranormal romance. I'm not a romance reader. I do pick up one from time to time, and I do like stepping out of my usual literary genre. I don't think I really would have ventured out if it wasn't for liking Emezi's work, but in this book we follow a girl named Galilee as she meets and falls in love with the devil. And I know that sounds kind of silly, but it almost reminds me of the TV show True Blood, with how the supernatural is blended into the real world. And there's also a super strong family storyline because Galilee comes from a matriarchal family. They've always known that something was different about her. So while she's falling in love with the devil, she's also reckoning with her place in her family. I liked this. I didn't love it. I'm definitely going to have this be my #1 recommendation for fantasy romance, because I think even if a story isn't for you, Emezi always writes something that you can pull multiple themes and conversations from. I gave it 3 stars. Back to the long list we go. I picked up The Wilderness by Angela Flournoy, and I actually just saw her on her book tour. And I don't know how well you can see my annotations, but I did tab it. I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4.5 stars. In this, we follow 4 friends and then one of the friends' sisters. It's a second coming of age and also what it means for them existing as Black women in America. They all explore different themes and they're all done incredibly well. Another shocking ending and one you will not be able to forget about. Then I read an advanced copy of Palaver by Bryan Washington. It's about a complicated relationship between a son and his mother. There's this really fraught tension between them because they don't have a close relationship, but ultimately he's living in Japan and his mom comes to visit him, and they face their resentment and they have to live together in such a small confined space. I didn't care so much for the characters, but I love the writing, and that's what won me over with this to give it a 4 stars. And this is on the short list. Again, the long list. I read The Pelican Child by Joy Williams. This was another advanced audio copy. It's a short story collection. I think all of the works have previously been published before. This was fine. I don't know why it made the long list. There really isn't much to say about it. I gave it 3 stars. Then I read my advanced copy of Helm by Sarah Hall. This book is about the wind personified and our relationship with the environment. I loved this. It is whimsical but also urgent, and throughout the story we follow the wind and learn about its personality and then how the wind has interacted with humankind throughout different eras of human existence. It's incredibly well balanced, and the author said she's been working on this book for 20 years and it clearly shows. I love that the wind is cheeky and mischievous. Helm, the character, has such a unique voice. It's really funny, but then you can still walk away thinking about how our relationship with the environment would change if we knew that the wind had a personality, or that different aspects of nature did have perceived consciousness. I gave this 4.5 stars. Then I read Leave the World Behind by Rumaan Alam. This came out in 2020 and was a finalist for the National Book Awards that year, but Rumaan Alam is the chair for the fiction panel this year. Since I know that I read through the long list, I also try to read a book from the chair of judges. Last year was Lauren Groff and I read Fates and Furies, so I read Leave the World Behind. It's about this white family who go to upstate New York, or maybe like the Hamptons, and while they're there, this Black couple shows up claiming to be the owners of the house that they're staying in and that they need to now stay there because there's some unknown catastrophe happening. It's a very clear-cut story talking about race and wealth. It talks about the 4 adults and the white couple's children. You learn about the Black couple's family too, but they're off page. A solid story, easy 4 stars. Final book I read was Only Son by Kevin Moffat. This is the one that carried over into November. Stay with me, it's on the long list. I loved the writing in this. The main character loses his father at a young age, and we learn about the way that that grief has impacted his life. It's pretty straightforward. I don't think this was for me, but I gave it 4 stars because I really appreciated its examination of grief. It felt very realistic and you couldn't help but feel for the main character. Very observant. Again, great writing. This is from a small indie press, so I had not heard about it at all. Not my new favorite, but I definitely appreciate it and I'm glad that I read it. And that's it for October. If you've made it this far, comment a book emoji and what your favorite book of the month was. And if you read any of these, what did you think? As always, I'm Olivia. Happy reading. I'll see you next time.